Good morning. Welcome to day 7 of the 12 days of playing with fire. Today, rather than recording a video, I will be reading for you the first chapter of Playing with Fire. So here we go. Dedication for the Duke and the Duchess, whose real-life romance taught a dragon how to forgive, a human how to love, and an author how to trust. In memory of Philip William Bosland, 1945 to 2012. You can rest now, Pops, and I'll keep an eye on her for you. Forward, Leah. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This much is true. Things branch off soon thereafter, depending on whose beginnings you're referring to. Our Genesis mixes with yours as we once lived together in peace on this earth. We are the Anunnaki, but you know us as dragons. As with much of what comes after the beginning, the truth of what we are has been molded to fit the purpose of the story's writer. People create villains to fight their battles and heroes to win their wars, but sometimes it's nothing more than innocent words on a page that can decide the fate of the world. So I'm going to start from the beginning, or at least where it all began for me. Consider this your one and only warning. This is not a fairy tale. My story is real and it's gritty with pain and loss, but it's one the world needs to hear. Not all of the stories worth being told have happy endings, my friend, and not all of the happy endings begin with a story that's worth being told. Chapter 1. I hated running. Don't get me wrong, I could sprint like a pronghorn antelope when the situation called for it. I just preferred not to. Parts tended to jiggle, and I don't give a damn what kind of super runner's bra you wore, they still jiggled. As I plowed down the deserted city street in the wee hours of the morning, the sensation of my breath flopping around in my bargain brand push-up just added fuel to the already burning inferno better known as my temper. I pushed the alert button on my silver arm cuff as I approached the spot where Tig and Tinsley should be waiting. It had been a setup from the start. I'd known who, or rather what, Mr. Anthony Chilness was when I waltzed into the hotel he booked online for his short stay here in Savannah. A few bats of my mascara-covered lashes in his direction, and I had his full attention. Let's just say I'm his type. One dance to the hotel man's piano rendition of Enchanted Melody, and I merely had to suggest some fresh air might be nice to get him alone. Once outside, I'd snatched what he had hidden inside his pants so fast it took him a moment to register that I hadn't been reaching for what he'd thought. Cue current scene where I'm quite literally running for my life and getting angrier by the second. I'm pretty sure you won't like me when I'm angry. I don't turn green or anything, but I've been known to burn some shit down. I slid behind a building, ruining my new purple dress. I'd lost the shoes 2 blocks ago, and good riddance, they hurt like hell. Don't try and hide, I heard Anthony say. If you'd been next to me then, your gaze upon the charismatic man pacing around in a circle in his Armani suit, you wouldn't have perceived him to be anything out of the ordinary. A handsome devil, no doubt, but nothing special. Now, if I told you that same man was a dragon, you'd probably laugh at me, and that would land you smack on the stupid section of my Wheel of Virtue for a plethora of reasons. 1, just because you perceive something in a certain manner doesn't mean that's the truth of the matter. 2, you shouldn't believe everything you see on TV is mostly crap. And finally, 3, no one laughs at a dragon. Oh, I'm not hiding, I told him, standing with his dragonstone in my hand. I'm just looking for something to smash this with. Holy shit, it's you! He stumbled over his words, sheer panic in eyes that were now as red as the stop sign to his left, a sharp contrast to the lovely green they'd been inside the restaurant. My reflection cleared in them as he focused on me. I'd taken off my short brown wig before I stood up, and my long silver hair hung to the middle of my back, my own eyes blazing red. His words stopped me in my tracks. Look, I don't know who you think I am, buddy, I began. But that's for us to know. Tinsley's sing-song voice came from behind me just as a spotlight lit up the entire alley. And for you to never find out, Tig finished for her, stepping from behind the car that had been hidden in the shadows. Anthony had spirit, I'll give him that. He refused to go down without a fight, despite my possession of his stone. He charged the closest one of us, which happened to be Tinsley. I jumped forward, yanking the stop sign from the ground and swinging at him with all my might. I slipped on the wet pavement and missed, falling to my knees behind him. He didn't even pause, and Tinsley's entire body braced for the impact. All 5 feet 2 inches of her. The look on her face would have given Charles Manson pause, pure malice with a little joy thrown in for good measure. Anthony was 3 steps from a head-on collision with a little ball of crazy when 2 shots rang out in the night. He fell like a brick and cracked like an egg onto the dirty city street. Damn it, Tig, I had it, Tinsley whined and kicked the limp body before her out of sheer frustration. I took the opportunity to hop in the driver's seat side of the yellow Mustang and pull it around, and to also try and process what the hell he'd said. "It's you," he'd said, but he couldn't know about me. No one from the rogue clans knew that I existed. "That's not a chance I'm prepared to take, Tins. You should know me better than that," Tig said. He put his arm around her shoulders and pulled her into the back seat. Once their door shut, I peeled out, tires screeching as I turned the wheel and gunned the gas. "Good job, Leah," he said. "I think the whole neighborhood is awake now." "Good," I said. "Good," Tinsley mocked me, her arms still crossed as she pouted over her missed opportunity for a fight. "Let every member of the rogue clans come and find me so I can use my badass skills to take all their stones for the council," she said in the same tone. "I don't work for the council," I snapped. "I don't work for anyone." "Well, we do," Tig said, stepping in to cool the situation down before things got out of hand. I started to say something about being a good little dragon, but when I saw his snow-white irises, I shut my mouth. White ice from Tig meant his Siamese twin sisters were one shade short of midnight, which is kind of like a rattle of a rattlesnake, a warning that you learn not to ignore. Tig took a deep breath and continued. "We've got to check in with the council and alert them that Anthony's been taken care of, file the paperwork. You know the drill, Leah." Yeah, I muttered, turning the wheel to make a sharp left across traffic and head to the North American offices of the Dragonkind Council. If they'd heard what Anthony had said, they'd chalked it up to a man facing his death. Some of them begged, some rambled, hell, some even swore to rise from the grave and take us back to the underworld with them. It got old. "I'll just wait in the car," I told them as we pulled into the parking lot of one of the oldest buildings in Savannah. Though she stood tall and proud, time and humanity had left their scars. Beautiful graffiti work littered her faded brick walls. Over the years she'd become part of the scenery, unseen to almost everyone and unchanging within herself. Men and women passed her on their way to work or the grocery store every day, never knowing the truth within her walls. Sometimes, when the wind ran from the cold Savannah River in late January and ripped around the city in search of warmth, the old girl sighed as she swayed, struggling against the foundation on which she was built. She was stuck, though, and she knew it. "Don't be ridiculous," Tinsley said, jerking me back from my thoughts. "Look, I'm sorry, okay?" She pushed her long black hair out of her eyes that were once again sky blue. I glanced at Tig. His eyes had returned to their natural shade of brown, and he ran his hands through his blonde hair. "Does she mean it?" I asked him. "Tell the truth." "Yeah, she's sorry she upset you, but no, she's not sorry she called you out for acting like an idiot while driving," he said. I stood there for a moment, looking back and forth between the two siblings who had been there for me when even I'd been ready to give up on me. "That'll do," I said, turning toward the front entrance. I glanced behind my shoulder, and they were sharing a weird Siamese twin moment. "You two coming or what?" I asked with a smile. Despite the early morning hours, the first floor of the North American Dragonkind Council buzzed with activity. The DK Council had members of both the Jayad and the Saya clans. While they were all dragonkind, their opinions differed greatly and often led to bickering. I suppose the council could be compared to your human government with its Democrats and Republicans. They both have the same drama, same inability to get anything done for their incessant squabbling over mundane things. The rogues, well, we all have our bad apples, don't we? There were offices in every country, and the general DK population visited for things like safe passage as they traveled, or new papers and forms of identifications that the humans required. It also served as somewhat of a police station, except we didn't have police, we had hunters, like Tig and Tinsley. I smiled at the older woman who occupied the entire space of a large brown chair behind a small desk under a sign marked "Check in here." "Leah Conti, you get yourself over here right this instant," she squealed as she waddled around the desk and threw her arms around me. "Hey, Jenna," I said, returning the embrace with more eagerness than I'd intended. The contact felt good, the warmth of her dragon's skin, the smell of the cookies she'd made earlier. I didn't get a lot of hugs. In fact, I didn't get a lot of touching, period. That was my fault, though. "How have you been, child?" she asked. "Oh, fine. We're here to see Dominic. Big kill to tell him about." The lines around her lips increased when her expression changed from a smile to a frown, and she shook her head. "I don't like the thought of you out there fighting those dirty rogues alone." "Hey," Tinsley said, "what are we?" "Chopped liver," Tig finished for her. "You are Tweedle crazy and Tweedle crazier, that's what you are. If your poor mama could see you, she'd just be beside herself. All this running around playing good dragon, bad dragon, like either of you would stand a chance if you came face to face without anything from this one." She motioned her head in my direction. "I don't know, Jenna," I told her. "These two can hold their own in a fight." She waved her hands to shoo us down the hall. "Just go, the lot of you. Take care of your business with Dominic and stop driving this poor old woman insane. I can't take it." We started to walk away. "She's a crazy old bat," Tinsley said once we were out of earshot. She may be an old bat, but she's not crazy, Tig said. She took care of Leah like a mom. Don't you remember, Tins? Yeah, I remember, she said, uncocking her gun. And that's the only reason she's still alive. Tinsley could be a little hot-headed and tended to pout and had been known to whine. Okay, Tinsley was a spoiled brat, but the fierceness of her loyalty more than made up for her shortcomings. As the only surviving pair of Siamese twins, she and Tig had been somewhat of a big deal around the council. They were dragon kind, but the anomalies in their genetic makeup caused them to develop without a stone. They didn't have the powers that we did, but their psychic connection was beyond comprehension. Their yin and yang brains were of great interest to our kind, and our researchers had been ecstatic at the opportunity to see what made them tick. None of that matters when you're a little kid, though, and I just thought they looked cool standing next to each other. Tig's spiky and somewhat unkempt blonde hair nearly disappeared when compared to Tinsley's silky black mane that had never seen above her shoulders. Where his eyes were chocolate brown and cloudy with his emotions, hers were clear and sky blue. When her passions were too much for her to bear, the color would deepen to a blue so dark it appeared black, pulling Tig's brown for substance and leaving his eyes the shade of day-old snow. I learned at an early age that a dark-eyed Tinsley was bad news and to steer clear. I still had the scar on my left knee in case I ever needed a reminder. Despite all of these notable variations, it had been their height differential that caught my attention the first day I met them. They'd come with their mother and waited for Dominic in a small room meant only for esteemed guests. I saw them through the little glass opening in the door and thought, hey, look, maybe they're like me. But unfortunately, no one was like me. Perhaps someone should knock. We'd stopped in front of Dominic's large wooden door, and the deep voice startled us all. Holy snotballs, Dominic, Tinsley said, holding her hand over her heart when she spun around to see him leaning against the wall. Make a noise or something. I just did, Dom replied, fighting back a smile. He reached past us and opened the door. Won't you all come in? I'd love to hear what you three have been up to. I rolled my eyes as he placed his hand on my shoulder. Hello, Leah. It's good to see you. Hello. I gave a quick nod and moved away from him, filing in behind the twins. The lavishly decorated room was exactly what you'd expect from a dragon like Dominic, if you really knew Dominic, which I did. He'd raised me, after all. Even though he'd been born a member of the Jai clan, his position as the head of the council required him to remain neutral to ensure equal representation for both sides. I'd never thought his actions to reflect such an unbiased stance. Though in fairness, I didn't think pure neutrality was an attainable goal. You're either for something or you're not. If you claim to be anything else, you're either lying to yourself or the person asking you to be neutral. I plopped down on the brown velour chase lounge next to the electric fireplace on the far wall that was meant more for decoration than warmth. Tig and Tinsley sat in red leather chairs across from his monstrous desk, which he sat on, folding his arms across his chest. Well, he asked us, what have you come to speak with me about today? We've come to report that Anthony has been taken care of, sir, Tig answered for us. We'll need a cleaner to remove what's left of him from behind the alley on the warehouse at the corner of Jones and MLK. Ah, yes, Dom said. Carrie mentioned he'd be sending you three to deal with him. I assume capture was out of the question? Tig shifted in his seat and gave a politically correct answer that made me want to hurl. An attempt was made to bring him in peacefully, but was unsuccessful in the end. I see, Dom said. Well done, then. He reached forward to shake Tig's hand. The rogue clans have been using him for quite some time to run their lower ring operations. And the stone? He asked. I pulled it out of my pocket and tossed it to him without even looking. I assume that means this isn't the one you're looking for, then? You would assume correctly, I said, refusing to meet his gaze. And you will continue to look, even though you put yourself in danger each time? I'm not in any danger, I quipped. My stone is out there somewhere, and I'm going to find it. That's one theory, he said, disapproval coloring his voice. Yeah, well, so is gravity. I knew I was being difficult, but things with Dom were never easy, or at least they hadn't been since my 18th birthday. Leah, I don't know why you risk your life to find a relic you clearly don't need. Your abilities are far greater than any I've ever seen, and you've never once felt the pull of a stone. Yeah, that did it. I jumped up, my fury resonating in the crimson that flooded my irises. You know exactly why I'm looking for my stone, and it has nothing to do with my abilities, I said through clenched jaw, inching closer to his desk with each syllable. Maybe, if the council would help me find my mother, this wouldn't be such a cumbersome process. I shouldn't be saying any of this in front of Tig and Tinsley, but I couldn't help it. He stood to face me when I reached him, refusing to relent. We were about the same height, so I straightened my back and lifted my chin to reach my full 5 feet 10 inches and meet him eye to eye. For a brief moment, I regretted losing the 1-inch hills in the street. We've been through this, Leah, he said. I will not waste council resources on a lost cause. We're on the brink of war with the rogue clans, and A lost cause? I cut him off, fuming, literally. I could feel the expansion in my chest that came before the fire. We're talking about my mother, about who I am. How can you say that's a lost cause? Yeah, Dom, Tinsley said, standing up, much to Tig's dismay, according to the horrified expression on his face. We're always on the brink of war with the rogues anyway, she said, using air quotes. Don't be such an ass. Any annoyance I had for her earlier actions evaporated into a thick mist of comfort that held me tightly. No one had ever stood up for me like that, and especially not to Dom. It just wasn't done. Tinsley never did give too much of a shit about the way things were done, though. He turned to her, his composure faltering. Caring for her safety as being an ass, Tinsley? He asked through tight lips. Sir, Tig interjected, we just wanted to follow protocol. Protocol? He laughed at that. Since when have you three followed protocol? My patience wears thin, Leah, he told me, shaking his head. I didn't say anything, so he turned his back to us, looking out the window. Whatever, I said, storming out of the office. I hoped Tig and Tinsley were following me because I wasn't looking back. I was never looking back. I wanted to kick something, but the walls of our little compound weren't particularly sturdy. Tig and Tinsley were in a heated discussion about her mouth and when it should and should not be opened in our living room. Or at least I'm sure it had been a living room at some point. The 100-year-old house had seen better days, and before we came, had been vacant for as long as I can remember. The walls were thin, the stairs were tricky, the water smelt funny, and the electrical wiring had a mind of its own, but it had become home over the last year. I did love the floors, though. They were solid wood throughout. You didn't find that much these days. All the new houses had bamboo or faux wood or some other material that had no business being on floor. These were sturdy, smooth, and always cool under my feet. And when you're a dragon, anything to help you cool is a good thing. We're hot-blooded, you know. It's not her fault, I called from where I sat on a precarious section of the kitchen counter that could have fallen at any moment. She was just trying to stand up for me, and on top of that, she's right, he was being an ass. Tig's hands went to his head as he fought to keep his composure. I don't care if he's being a full-fledged donkey. You don't speak to the head of the entire North American Council like that. It's called respect, you two. Yeah, and it's two-way street, I told him, hopping down. I'm sick of being his little puppet. I don't know what he's pissed about anyway. I'm still training and improving my abilities. I'm just doing it all on my own terms and helping kill bad guys in the process. That's totally a win-win, right? Tinsley threw her hands up in disgust. I'm done with this conversation. They all make me sick. Their rules and traditions. Those rules and traditions have kept our people alive for thousands of years, Tig said. Can you please try, Tins? Just try to do what we're supposed to do. Why, my dear Theron, Tinsley said, crossing her arms with a smug smile on her face. We're supposed to be protecting Leah, and that's just what I did. Tig shook his head. He knew he'd lost this round, and it would be a complete waste of breath to keep berating her. Fine, he said. Woohoo! Score one for the little twin. She danced around him, thrusting her arms to the sky and shaking her booty on his leg before leaving the room in a full-on moonwalk. She means well, I told him. I know she does. He grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and sat down in a wicker chair we'd rehabbed. It leaned a little to the left. I just get tired of trying to convince everyone else she does. Look, I said, squatting down next to him. You guys don't have to stay here with me. We both know there's a space for you on the council if you want it. Yeah, sure, he said, looking at me as if I'd spoken utter nonsense, even though we both heard the truth in my words. He and Tinsley would have been revered members of the Jayad section on the council. I think Dom had meant it to be a test when he'd sent Tig and Tinsley to bring me home. Get Leah back safe and sound, take your seat on the council. Wild gargles couldn't have pulled me back, though. If anything could have broken me, 3 straight days of Tinsley whining would have done the trick, but I stood my ground. I'm sure they thought me brave, a notion that I found quite funny, considering the real reason I refused to go back. When Tig realized I wouldn't budge, he and Tinsley chose to stay with me. They would report back any trouble, except any official council business that came their way, and I'd be safe. I guess Dom gave up on me and accepted his proposal. A year had passed, and they were both still here, watching out for me. Thanks, I told him. You guys are the best friends I could ever ask for. Yeah, no problem, he smiled, though the sentiment didn't seem to reach his eyes, and he stood up, slapping his knees with his hands. Well, I'm going for a run. I'll see you later. A run? Aren't you tired? I checked my watch. It's 6 in the morning and we haven't slept at all. Nah, I'm wide awake. Later. I called after him, but the ferocious pounding of his feet against the pavement surely drowned me out. I felt uneasy, as if I'd said something to upset him, though I couldn't figure out what it had been for the life of me. I stomped back to Tinsley's room to ask her what I'd done wrong and found her sprawled across her antique, as in very old, not very nice, daybed, hugging her favorite purple fluffy pillow. The girl had some serious OCD. We're talking spotless room, color-coordinated closet, weapons by size kind of OCD. I mean, who keeps their weapons by size? No one, that's who. Everyone knows they're kept in order from deadliest to least deadly. Duh. I shut the door gently to avoid waking her, although judging by the volume of the horrible noises coming from her mouth and nose, I doubted a tornado could rouse her at that point. Sleep was out of the question for me now that Mr. Moody Pants had gotten all uppity. I could only think of one way to work off this steam, and no, I wasn't going to chase after him. I believe I already expressed to you my disdain for running. The only way for me to relax involved good music and a fireproof environment. The stairs that led down to the cellar under our ancient home were in much better shape than those on the inside because they were new, as was the room the size of a small football field at the bottom of them. Dom had insisted I have somewhere to practice, and I couldn't very well breathe fire in the backyard. He didn't want me to lose any momentum with my training. I exchanged my ripped dress for a pair of tight black yoga pants and black sports tank. I tied my hair in a tight bun on top of my head, rolled my shoulders, and took a deep breath. Smoke filled my lungs. I know that's something that a human would not associate with breathing, but for us it's different. Our smoke is light and fresh and rushes through our bodies, pushing a boost of adrenaline with it. For the first time all day, I could breathe. No council officials commanding my life or dragons who needed to be taught a lesson. No thoughts of the stone I couldn't find or the parents who left me. My body mimicked a feather blowing from the wind, and I floated across the space, eyes closed, my arms and legs moving from pose to pose. I stopped dead in the center of the room, opened my eyes, and exhaled a long breath of orange fire. And then I caught it.